In marriage, setting boundaries isn't about taking away freedoms. It's about creating a safe and trusting relationship. With today's busy world of technology and the rising use of social media, we have to be very careful not to allow it to go too far.
In this episode, we'll go over five
Mhm.
important boundaries that will help to protect your relationship against cheating and build commitment, trust, and respect. From spending private time with the opposite sex to
Mm,
building
yeah.
a strong relationship with God, we're going to dive into ways that you can uh, safe proof your relationship from cheating.
So, why is it important to have boundaries in your relationship?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of reasons that boundaries are important. I think that no one goes into a relationship, especially a marriage, thinking
Mm,
that there's going to be cheating, there's going to be infidelity. You don't have that
yeah, I
idea.
don't think they go into with that.
Right. But as life goes on and as situations arise, there may be some habits that people have that lend itself
Okay.
to that
Okay.
temptation.
Yeah.
So that's what I've seen. So that's why we just kind of put boundaries in from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So what do you think as far as the boundaries go?
I agree with that 100%. Just being very cautious in where and what we do, how we do things, who we do those things with.
Sure.
And that again kind of protects from even a chance.
Right.
So it's setting a boundary before you even get to where it may be too far.
Well,
So,
because don't you think a lot of times people are like, that'll never happen to us?
yeah, and
Well,
probably honestly with all good intention that it never would.
right.
But if you allow things to continue to go and gets a little bit further and it's like, oh, it's just okay, it doesn't really matter,
Right.
that's allowing a foothold in a place that probably should not be.
Yeah. And so I think oftentimes people, when they think about boundaries, they view it as a negative.
Yeah, yeah.
And how do you see boundaries more as a positive?
That's a good one. So boundaries keep again, I kind of said earlier about kind of keeps you in a safe spot, kind of keeps you um secured
Yeah.
in your relationship. I mean,
Yeah.
trust is there. So, I mean, for me, that's kind of a big thing, obviously, having that kind of trust and
Hmm.
no concern, no worry. And the same with you.
Right. Right. I think that's good because we talk a lot about being intentional
Mhm.
when in marriage or family. And so setting those boundaries up front is being
Yeah,
intentional.
yeah,
So it's giving your relationship the like best possible outcome
yep,
because it's protecting it
yep.
from the beginning.
Shielding,
Yeah.
shielding.
Yeah, that's so good.
So, tip number one is setting boundaries with the opposite sex.
Yeah. So what kind of boundaries, like if you were just to think off the top of your head, what are some of the boundaries that we put in place when it comes to the opposite sex?
So, I do not allow people to touch me.
That is true.
I was
Besides, your
so
family,
well, yeah, it's very far or selected few that
right?
are in that. So,
Like
um,
friend family,
yeah, yeah,
that group.
yeah, yeah. I get hard time given to me a lot because of that, but
Mhm.
it's a safeguarding is what it really is. So,
Right.
but we joke around that, but that is actually one.
Yeah.
But another one that I thought of as soon as you asked that question was not being. So let's say you are at work late, or you work um, or in and around, not being spending extra time with someone in a
Mhm.
facet where it's you and them alone. I don't
Right.
care in what kind of area or position or
Mhm.
situation it is. Just keeping very clear, open boundaries in that.
Right. Well, and then you talked about not spending like that one-on-one time
Hmm.
together. In coaching and teaching, I've actually been in situations where I work very closely
Yeah.
with like male teachers, male coaches, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
Like
no, I'm not saying that at all.
we just knew from the beginning there are certain things that we would do to protect our relationship,
Hmm.
to set those boundaries up. Because, I mean, a couple of reasons. Number one, we want to protect our relationship.
Absolutely.
Number two, I always thought about their wives. Like,
Yeah,
wouldn't it be respectful for their wives to think they don't have to worry when they go to work,
for sure.
that even though they're spending a lot of time
Yeah.
with another female, it's not, there's no boundaries being
It's
crossed.
professional. It's
Hmm.
professional across the board.
Yeah. So some of the things that we used to do, like we never had conversations about relationships. Like we would talk about our kids, we would talk about funny things that we did at
Yeah.
home. Like we shared all those things,
Stories, yeah.
but we never talked details about relationships. I
Nope.
never asked them, they didn't ask me, and so it just kept those things separate.
And just didn't cross that line. There was no need to.
Right.
Again, you kind of said it. It's to keep. It's to be respectful of the other
Hmm.
spouse that's in the friendship or in the work relationship. So,
Right.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. One other I can think of with that is there would be times, especially in the coaching situation, because we would have to talk maybe after school or after practice, after a game. And so anytime there was communication, texting or whatever, I immediately would tell Chris, hey, this person
Yeah,
texted me. And it wasn't ever like it was just a check-in. Like I always wanted him to know that if he picked up my phone and saw a
yeah,
message from the people that I coached with, that he would already know that that was there.
yep.
And so that was just a safeguard that we put in place. So tip number 2 is to be open with your phone and computer. So why do you think it's important that one or the other of us has access, full access to the other's phone?
Have nothing to hide.
Mhm.
Always, you kind of said it earlier on the last tip about just being open to anything. Like, here you go. I have nothing to hide from you. I have
Right.
nothing to keep from you. It's a very open communication with that. The other thing is that I mean, obviously, with today's world with technology, you could be on social media and you
Mhm.
could connect with someone of the opposite sex that is looking for something different
Yeah.
than just friendship. And so just being very careful with that.
Mhm.
um, I don't want a foothold, and
Right.
so I do not dabble in that. As a matter of fact, up until recently, never even had social media accounts, just because I just didn't want to
Mhm.
deal with any of that.
Mhm.
But I realized that there's a tool there that can be used for the
For
ability for
good,
good. And
for
so
business, for connection
connection
with
and say, yeah, I
people.
get it.
Right.
But just being very careful. And the same with the computer and the iPads and the
Mhm.
iPods and whatever else is out there that my kids make fun of me,
I
whatever I
don't
call
think anyone has an iPod anymore,
whatever.
but if they did, be cautious.
Like I said, they all make fun of me because I always call them the wrong thing. The ear pods.
Oh yeah. Just hang around longer. Chris will bring out all of the names.
I will. I will.
But yeah, that's so true. Like neither of us, well, we've gone back and forth. Sometimes we have a lock on our phone, sometimes we don't. Usually the lock or the pin code is more about like not our children not having full access
Yeah,
to our
for
phones.
sure.
Um, but with one another, we always know what those codes are,
Yep.
so we can always log in. So that's huge. Is there anything else that you can think about as far as when it comes to phones and computers?
It's the devil. No, I'm just kidding. um, I mean, just be careful with them. I have a thought about those that I'm worried. Like I worry for people. I worry for my son who is going into the world. I have to teach him to be respectful about certain things, and I have to teach him how to be a man and to be a
Mhm.
man of God. And so it is just a very today's world has made it harder, especially on that subject.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned teaching our kids about that is screens, we are very particular about what way screens face.
Oh yeah,
So like if we're all hanging out, or if our kids are working on their computers because a lot of
that's
their homework is on computers, having screens visible to where anyone can walk past. We talk about that.
not being allowed in the bedrooms.
Hmm.
They're only allowed in a certain area of the home, and that's
Right.
another part of the accountability is being able to see and question if there's
Hmm.
anything that's questionable.
Yeah,
So,
and that's kind of going more into the kids, but those
but
principles
those
are the
principles are, yeah,
same for
for
us
us,
in
yeah,
our
absolutely.
relationship, and as we teach them, how good principles for
Yeah.
marriage.
So even further on that is time of day. That's
Yeah.
another massive one for me.
Hmm.
It's like if if my spouse is going to bed, guess where I'm going? I'm not hanging out, and I'm not saying there's not ever that, but it's just creating that kind of habit.
Yeah.
So we're not up late at night and we're on our screens, and
Right.
oh, something comes across and you become very inquisitive. Yeah, just stop, hit the brakes,
Right.
let's go.
Yeah.
So tip number 3 is to set smart limits on phone time.
Yes, and you kind of just led right into this,
Yeah.
which is great because there's so much time that can be spent and time that can be wasted and temptation that can
Yeah.
happen
Hmm.
when you have just unlimited screen time. And so, why, like, what are the things you feel like we've done to set those boundaries?
So we have kind of these areas where we just don't have phones available. We just turn
Hmm.
them off or we set them aside. One of those is kind of for the family, but it's our dinner time. It's
Yeah.
they're not allowed. And so nothing is that important. The relationship with us having conversation is much more important. And
Hmm.
then we extend that a little bit further into the night where those times are just us having conversation, where we have intimate conversations. And so usually it's after the kids are in bed and we're having a conversation about stuff that husband and wives talk about.
Right.
So
Well, and I mean, you think about like we're very cautious about where we're on a phone. So
yeah,
we might be on it in our bedroom, but that's only like together,
yeah,
and then they're put
then they're
away.
put away.
But for our family, we don't allow them in the rooms at all
Nope.
or any private
No, we have a
areas.
set area where they
Hmm.
get charged and kept out here, and that's just left out in the open.
Right. And why do you think having phones in those in bedrooms or in those private areas? I mean, I think I know what you're going to say, but how does that help set a boundary in our relationship?
So for us, um, just keeping the temptations out. Don't even, I said it earlier on, the very first step is just here's the set boundary. So you never even get close to the actual boundary. So
Yeah.
we're setting it, setting a standard ahead of the standard.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we don't have any problems there.
Right. Well, and when does temptation happen?
A lot of times when you're in the dark and you're alone.
When you're in the dark and when you're alone.
Yep,
Yeah, I think that's
absolutely.
perfect. And so just eliminating that altogether um, takes away the ability to hide
Yep,
something, which is so important. Not that any of us think we will hide something, but you never know. Like you never
yeah,
know how you will react.
yeah.
It's the easiest way to fall, right?
It really is. It really
Is
is.
when you
So
think you're not going
I'd go run in and throw the phone out the window.
to. He probably would.
Just for fun. So a good way or use of technology. So I thought of this because it wasn't too long ago. I sent a reservation for, we have talked about this in a past video that Shelby loves just being taken out on a Friday night or a weekend night, and it's like she doesn't know, and she's just told it's get ready time. And
Hmm.
so the reservation was sent to her phone as well to let her know she had a date set at a certain spot, and I even said you need to dress nicely. And
Yeah.
so it was like, oh, so it's a very kind of anticipation. And so I came and picked her up and we went and had dinner, and it was a very nice
Yeah.
restaurant and that kind of thing. So technology can be used for amazing things. So
Right.
try to think outside of the box of how you could use technology to keep your spouse on their toes.
Right. Yeah. So, tip number 4 is to show your spouse that you care every day or be intentional in your relationship. So, what can you think as far as that boundary?
Is
Why
this
is
where I
that
get to
important?
come in and give you a kiss?
No,
No.
no, every time. Tries to take advantage of every moment. So, why do you think it's important?
Okay, so the reason why it was important is because it leaves little room for you to go outside of
Um,
your marriage.
yeah.
So you're giving all of your attention, you're showing all of your affection
Mhm.
to your spouse, and they're reciprocating it back, and it builds your bond. And
Right.
so that leaves little temptation room for anything outside of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, most often when we've seen couples who have experienced infidelity, usually there's been something that separated them,
Yeah.
and and it may have been small to start.
It started small, but it just got
Mhm.
big, and then it obviously evolved into something really not so well. So,
Right. So they like when you intentionally care for them, when you intentionally do things that they like, you spend time together, all of those things are sewing into that
yeah,
relationship and strengthening it
building it.
so
Yep.
that you're guarding it
Mhm.
from temptation. And I'm also going to go here.
All right, go.
The sexual relationship is so important
It
in
sure is.
marriage
Yes, it is.
because it prevents and not prevents, it helps to prevent that
Yeah.
temptation. And so I think that we wouldn't be doing you a service if we didn't mention that. Like you need to, when you are having a relationship, you have got to invest in that sexual relationship in your marriage. It's the one place that God said, go for it.
Have fun.
Hmm.
Have fun. It glorifies his name.
And so
And
it's so important that you figure that out and you come together and just enjoy one
yeah,
another.
yeah. I said before, I am supposed to be the expert on Shelby and vice versa. So she knows what I like, I know what she likes. We enjoy it, we have fun, we glorify the Lord when we do it. And so
Yeah,
you went there. Let's do
I
this.
did. I went
Let's
there.
go. So tip number 5 is have a strong relationship with God.
Yeah, that's so important.
Absolutely.
Basically, everything we talk about can go back to that.
So we left it at number 5 because it is the pinnacle. And
Yeah,
so most people will say step number 1. And then by the time they go through the video, they'll forget about number 1. Step number 5, which is always number 1, is him being the number 1,
right.
which blesses them and
Mhm.
vice versa.
Yeah. So, I mean, having that strong relationship, building that with God every day gives you the sensitivity to protect your
Yep.
relationship, I think, is one of the main reasons that is so good. And also prevents you from just like the little temptations
Yeah.
that grow into bigger temptations and bigger
Yep.
problems.
Yep. So always addressing the small things, or by being intentional, avoiding those small things because they don't even become a root. And so
Right.
you avoid those things that could potentially become a bigger issue that
Hmm.
would drive each other apart and cause the potential of a fall.
Right. So tip number 5 is actually tip number 1.
And
Is that how we're understanding this?
absolutely,
I think so. It's
absolutely.
good.
So to put a cap on it, having boundaries in marriage allows for more freedom and protects you from potential falls.
Yeah, that's so good. And if you want more information on living
Come
intentionally
on.
in marriage and family, then hit the subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on any content when it comes out.